Today, I resimulated the entire 2023 Formula 1 season, but having Max Verstappen become Nikita Mazepin and DNFing every single race. Can Sergio Perez carry Red Bull to the drivers and constructors titles, or will Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, or even Aston Martin take one of those titles? Stay tuned to find out. My name is Chris, welcome back to CF Racing, and enjoy the video. Race 1 in Bahrain was won by Fernando Alonso, with Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton rounding out the podium, followed by George Russell, Carlos Sainz, Oscar Piastri, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon. Bottas actually scores 2 points in the Alfa Romeo. Tsunoda finishes P10. Sainz had fastest lap, and Oscar Piastri actually had pole in what would have been his first ever Formula 1 race. Race 2 in Saudi Arabia was won by Sergio Perez, followed by Hamilton and George Russell. Looks like Mercedes is having a good start to the season as they round out the podium. Lando Norris finishes 4th, followed by Sainz in 5th. Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Esteban Ocon, Alexander Albon, Gasly, and Carlos Sainz. And as you can tell, for the second race in a row, Charles Leclerc had a DNF. You love to see it. Race 3 in Australia, here we go. Charles Leclerc has won Australia just like he did in 2022, followed by Sergio Perez and Lando Norris in P3. Lewis Hamilton finishes 4th, followed by Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Alexander Albon, and Esteban Ocon round out the top 10. Charles Leclerc had the fastest lap, and Lewis Hamilton had pole position. Race 4 in Baku was won by Sergio Perez, followed by Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton rounding out the podium. 4 to 10, we have Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Alexander Albon. Lance Stroll rounds out the points. Lewis Hamilton had fastest lap, and Lando Norris had pole position. Race 5 in Miami was won by Charles Leclerc, followed by Sergio Perez, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Gasly, Ocon, Stroll. Albon rounds out the points. Hamilton had fastest lap, and Sergio Perez started from pole. After the first 5 rounds of the championship, this is what the top 10 in the driver's standings look like. Sergio Perez is on top with 105 points. He's actually doing pretty well so far, followed by Lewis Hamilton in 2nd with 74 points. Alonso's in 3rd, so pretty good top 3. Top 4, we have Charles Leclerc. 4 different teams in the top 4. Pretty similar to sort of how this year is actually. George Russell's 5th, followed by Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri, as a rookie in the F123 game, is actually doing a pretty good job considering how low they rate their rookies. Gasly is in 9th, and Esteban Ocon is in 10th. And after this round again, the Constructors' Championship looks like this. It is very close at the top, with Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari all within 23 points. You absolutely love to see it. McLaren is in 4th, with Aston Martin in 5th, basically carried by Fernando Alonso. Alpine is in 6th, followed by Williams in 7th, Alfa Romeo in 8th, AlphaTauri in 9th, and everybody, favorite thing to say, Haas is in dead last. Race 6 in Imola was a back-to-back win for Charles Leclerc, and Carlos Sainz finishes P2. That is a Ferrari 1-2 in Italy. You love to see it. Lando Norris finishes 3rd, followed by George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Esteban Ocon, Alexander Albon. Valtteri Bottas rounds out the points, with Charles Leclerc having fastest lap and pole position, and it seems like he actually got a Grand Slam this weekend. Race 7 in Monaco was won by Lando Norris, his first win in Formula 1, with Charles Leclerc P2. He didn't have a bad race in Monaco for the first time ever, and Carlos Sainz in P3. Oscar Piastri finished P4, almost a double podium for McLaren, followed by Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez, George Russell, Pierre Gasly. Bottas rounds out the points. Perez had fastest lap, and Charles Leclerc actually started from pole. Race 8 in Spain was won by Sergio Perez, with Lewis Hamilton P2 and Carlos Sainz P3. Lando Norris finishes P4, followed by Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Pierre Gasly. Valtteri Bottas rounds out the points. Albon actually got fastest lap, but he does not get the point for it, and Sergio Perez started from pole. Race 9 in Canada was won by Sergio Perez, with Charles Leclerc P2 and Carlos Sainz P3. It seems like that Ferrari car's got some pretty good upgrades coming up recently, as Mercedes started the season with the better car, even Aston Martin, as Fernando Alonso won the first race. Alonso finishes P4, followed by Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Lando Norris, Lance Stroll, Oscar Piastri, Gasly. Charles Leclerc had fastest lap, and Perez started from pole. Race 10 in Austria was won by Sergio Perez, followed by Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Fernando Alonso finishes P4, followed by Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Alexander Albon, Ocon finished in 9th, Gasly finished 10th, Perez had fastest lap, and Lewis Hamilton started from pole. After round 10 in Austria, the championship still is pretty close with Sergio Perez on top here with 188 points, but we do have a shakeup from the last time with Charles Leclerc being in P2 and Carlos Sainz being in P3. Lewis Hamilton is in 4th, followed by Lando Norris in 5th, Fernando Alonso in 6th, George Russell 7th, Oscar Piastri 8th, Esteban Ocon 9th, and Pierre Gasly rounds out the top 10. The constructor standings after round 10 in Austria looks like this. We got Ferrari on top, 69 points ahead of Mercedes. That's pretty nice. Followed by Red Bull in P3, all courtesy of Sergio Perez, as Max Verstappen, once again, is DNFing in every race. McLaren are in 4th, followed by Aston Martin in 5th, Alpine 6th, Williams 7th, Alfa Romeo 8th, AlphaTauri 9th, and Haas are the only team yet to score. They're in dead last. Race 11 in Silverstone was won by Sergio Perez with Charles Leclerc P2 and Lewis Hamilton P3. George Russell finished P4, followed by Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Oscar Piastri, Esteban Ocon. Albon rounds out the points. Perez had fastest lap in pole position, and I think that's his first Grand Slam of the season. Race 12 in Hungary was won by Perez once again, and as you can see, he's putting on quite a winning streak here with Charles Leclerc P2 and Carlos Sainz P3. Fernando Alonso finishes P4, followed by Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Lance Stroll P8, Yuki Tsunoda P9, and look at this, Daniel Ricciardo scores his first points of the season to finish P10. Carlos Sainz gets fastest lap, and Lando Norris actually started from pole, but as you can see, he DNF'd. Race 13 in Spa was won by Checo Perez once again, and we'll be doing a little win tally after he's done this little winning streak. Perez comes out on top with Lewis Hamilton P2 and Alonso P3. That's quite a fun podium, quite an experienced podium as well. Lando Norris finishes P4, followed by George Russell finished P4, followed by Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Pierre Gasly, Albon, Ocon, Lance Stroll 10th, Perez had fastest lap, and Carlos Sainz started from pole, and this was a Ferrari double DNF. That is quite painful. Race 14 in the Netherlands was won by Perez again, followed by Sainz and Leclerc P2 and P3. Hamilton finished P4, followed by Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Lance Stroll P9, Gasly P10, Perez had fastest lap, and Lewis Hamilton started from pole. Race 15 in Monza was again won by Sergio Perez, followed by Charles Leclerc P2 and Sainz P3. This Perez domination has got to stop, man. Hamilton finishes P4, followed by Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Pierre Gasly, Ocon in 9th, Ricciardo scoring another point, he finished P10, Hamilton had fastest lap, and Perez started from a pole. At the end of round 15 of Monza, Sergio Perez retains his lead and grows it quite substantially, as he has a pretty good win streak going on right now. After Monaco, he literally has not lost a race. He's pulling a Max Verstappen right now. Perez has a 104-point lead over Charles Leclerc in P2 and Carlos Sainz in P3. Lewis Hamilton's in 4th, followed by Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris, George Russell in 7th, Oscar Piastri in 8th, Gasly in 9th, and Esteban Ocon in P10, but Alexander Albon is actually closing on them in P11. The constructor standings after Monza has Ferrari still on top by 81 points, followed by Mercedes in P2 with 318 points. They're 81 behind, and Red Bull's 2 points behind Mercedes in P3. So it looks like we got a pretty good fight for P2, and honestly, by the end of the season, I can see it being a three-way fight for P1, because it seems like Perez is not going to lose another race. McLaren are in 4th, followed by Aston Martin 5th, Alpine 6th, Williams 7th, Alfa Romeo 8th, AlphaTauri 9th, and Haas still have no points. They're in dead last. Race 16 in Singapore was won by Sergio Perez, followed by Carlos Sainz in P2 and Lewis Hamilton in P3. I don't know what happened from the start of the year when it was a new winner almost every single race. Now it's just Sergio Perez. Alonso finishes P4, followed by George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Pierre Gasly, Oscar Piastri, Lance Stroll, Alexander Albon rounds out the points. Sainz had fastest lap, and Lando Norris started from pole, but once again, he started from pole and had a DNF. Race 17 in Japan was won by Sergio Perez, followed by Carlos Sainz in P2 and Lewis Hamilton P3. Lando Norris finishes P4, followed by George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, Esteban Ocon. Alexander Albon rounds out the points again. He is a P10 merchant. Perez had fastest lap, and George Russell had pole. Race 18 in Qatar is won by Sergio Perez. Are we surprised at this point? Perez comes P1, followed by Sainz P2, and Hamilton P3. Charles Leclerc finished P4, followed by Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Pierre Gasly, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll finishes P10, fastest lap was Lewis Hamilton, and pole position was Charles Leclerc. And let me do a little tally here. Sergio Perez won in Spain all the way to Qatar. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 race wins in a row, guys. Because he does not win in Circuit of the Americas, as that goes to Lewis Hamilton. Look at that. He finally wins a race for the first time since Saudi Arabia 2021. Hamilton finishes on top of Formula 1 again with Sergio Perez P2, of course, and Charles Leclerc P3. George Russell finishes P4, followed by Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas rounds out the top 10, Sainz had fastest lap, and Charles Leclerc had pole position. If this was a qualifying championship, this would be very close, by the way. Race 20 in Mexico, Sergio Perez wins his home Grand Prix. You absolutely love to see it, with Lewis Hamilton P2 and Fernando Alonso P3. Sainz finishes 4th, followed by George Russell, Oscar Piastri, and Lance Stroll, Kevin Magnussen, Bottas 9th, Esteban Ocon 10th. Leclerc had the fastest lap, but does not get the point because he had another DNF, and Lewis Hamilton started from a pole. After round 20 in Mexico, this will be the last time we take a look at the drivers and constructor standings until the end of the year. But we have a big shakeup in the grid here. We got Sergio Perez dominating. He's 160 points ahead of P2. But here we got Lewis Hamilton. He's at 275 points, 160 points behind. He's in P2. Carlos Sainz has 265 points. He's in P3. And Charles Leclerc has dropped all the way down to 4th. He has 247 points, 188 behind. He's in P4, and he's had a lot of DNFs in this. I can't believe it. He was clear, comfortable P2. Then he's had a lot of DNFs, and Carlos Sainz has had some pretty good performances. Gotta love it. Even in the game, Charles Leclerc completely unlucky. Fernando Alonso is in 5th, followed by George Russell 6th. Lando Norris 7th. Oscar Piastri in 8th. What a good season from him. Gasly's 9th, and Esteban Ocon is P10, with Lance Stroll actually moving up to 11th. In the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari still on top, 63 points ahead of Mercedes and 77 points ahead of Red Bull. McLaren is in P4, followed by Aston Martin in P5, Alpine P6, Williams P7, Alfa Romeo P8, AlphaTauri P9, and look at this, Haas actually have 4 points. They could pass AlphaTauri here if they have one more good race, but they're still in dead last. In Brazil, you love to see it. Charles Leclerc bounces back as he wins in Brazil with Sainz P2 and Lando Norris P3, arguably one of the best podiums of all time. Fernando Alonso finished P4, followed by Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, Oscar Piastri, George Russell P8, Gasly P9, and Bottas again finishing P10. George Russell had fastest lap, and he also started from pole, but he finished 8th, so I don't know what happened there. Race 22 in Vegas, the penultimate race of the season, was won by Sergio Perez. Are we surprised? Charles Leclerc finished P2, and Lewis Hamilton finished P3. Lando Norris finished 4th, followed by Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, Pierre Gasly 8th, Lance Stroll 9th, Albon P10 Merchant P10. Perez had fastest lap, and actually Fernando Alonso started from pole. And in the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi, it looks like Lewis Hamilton actually won this one. Thank God it's not Perez again. Perez finished P2 though, and Alonso finished 3rd. Carlos Sainz finished 4th, followed by Charles Leclerc in 5th, George Russell in 6th, Lando Norris 7th, Piastri 8th, Gasly 9th, Albon, the ultimate P10 guy, finished P10. Sainz had fastest lap and started from pole position. But now guys, let's take a look at the final standings. Leave your predictions in the comment section down below. And at the end of the year, this is what the drivers' standing look like. Sergio Perez did not need Max Verstappen, but he did have the Red Bull car. He came out on top with 487 points. If you guys want to see me do this with equal cars and having Max Verstappen DNF every single race, let me know. I will do that. I think I might do that one today, actually, just after this, because that will be quite fun. Because the Red Bull car clearly was the best car throughout the season. Perez had 487 points to finish P1. We got Hamilton in P2, 325. He had a great season. Carlos Sainz had 304 points. Charles Leclerc had 300 points. What a close and ultimate teammate rivalry there. Fernando Alonso finished P5 with 242 points. Lando Norris had 205 points. He finished P6. George Russell, I was very disappointed with George Russell in the simulation. He only had 193 points. Lewis Hamilton had 325. He really let the team down. Oscar Piastri finished P8 with 142 points. Gasly, 45 points to finish P9. And Esteban Ocon had 30 points to finish P10. Lance Stroll, P11 Merchant, you love to see it, 29 points. Albon, the P10 Merchant, he had 22 points, finished P12. Bottas had 12 points to finish P13. He had a pretty good season in that Alfa Romeo. Kevin Magnussen scored 4 points in the Haas to finish P14. Tsunoda had 3 points to finish P15. Ricciardo had 2 points to finish 16th. Zhou, Hulkenberg, Logan Sargent, P17, 18, 19. No points, did not score. And Max Verstappen, who finished dead last in every single race. What a fraud. He finished P20 with 0 points. And at the end of the season, this is what the constructor standings look like. I absolutely love this. Ferrari come out on top, 604 points, as their driver lineup was the most consistent. Sainz and Leclerc, 300 points and 304 points. I mean, 604, that's a good season. Mercedes, once again, was really let down by George Russell, but they still finished P2. Red Bull with Sergio Perez by himself, finished P3 with 487 points. McLaren finished P4 with 347. Aston Martin finished 5th with 271 points. Alpine finished 6th with 75. Williams finished 7th with 22. Alfa Romeo finished 8th with 12 points. AlphaTauri finished 9th with 4 points. And Haas finished in dead last with 4 points. I can't believe it. Nico Hulkenberg actually did not score a point in that car. So guys, with that being said, if you guys did enjoy this simulation, let me know in the comment section down below. Hit that like button, subscribe, share with your friends, join the Discord, link is in the description. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.